You're listening to Hardscape Growth, a podcast for hungry professionals who want to grow their businesses and level up. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Hardscape Growth Show. I'm your host, Alex from TechoBlock, and today we're joined by Lawson from Greystone in North Carolina. Greystone Hardscapes, one of our Techo pros, a very smart young businessman doing some very cool things in the state of North Carolina. If you check out his Instagram page, you'll see some really cool designs, really cool inlays and paver banding and just a bunch of funky stuff, which is pretty cool considering your pretty young age and your limited number of years running a business. You're banging out some pretty solid jobs. Welcome to the show, Lawson. How are you doing?
I appreciate it, Alex. Thank you, man. Doing well and ready to get this going.
All right. For those of you who are just listening, not watching, Lawson has put together his own super background for this video. He's got his logo all lit up. He's got some artificial turf mounted to the wall. So he's ready to rock here.
I'm trying to keep up with you guys, the big dogs, you know. But it's been a work in progress. Might not be the prettiest, but hey, it works, right?
There you go. The effort is the most important part.
That's right.
So, Lawson, I alluded to the few years in business. How long have you been in business now?
So we started I kind of started our journey in 2020. I think that was when COVID happened, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been in business now since then, so almost 4 years. The first year was more of a kind of a side thing, just hustling, thinking I could make some quick cash while I was in college. And that quick cash quickly turned into no cash. And just a passion for construction and the industry kept me in it. And here we are today. So
we had spoken a little bit through social media, but we met in person for the first time at the Techo Pro President's Club event that we had in November. And one of the things that we were talking about was your background being not from the construction world. And you kind of called it like a white collar guy living and working in a blue collar industry. How did you get started in this? Like, what motivated you to get started? I guess you just said how you got started, but why did you get started in this business?
I was always around like hands-on stuff, just because my ADHD, and I was always building Legos and stuff like that. But my parents are in the accounting industry, and my dad's a business coach, so I have no experience in construction whatsoever. But I've always had a passion for it just because it's very hands-on, and I do not want to be sitting behind a desk. My mom always told me I was probably going to be a ski bum and go live out in Colorado and go work at a ski resort if I wasn't working, doing something I really loved here. So we started, like I said, in 2020. It was during COVID. I was down at the beach at my parents' house down there. That's where my dad lives. And, he was talking about some trash can pad, and that's really where I started. I was like, hey, let's go to Home Depot, literally this is like right before the shutdown, but as they're starting to shut stuff down and stuff was still open here or there. So we went down there. I watched a couple YouTube videos because I'm really big on learning stuff off YouTube. And that was kind of the start. So before that, I had owned a car detailing company. I still own a portion of that today. And that's been kind of my business background, client interaction, sales, stuff like that. We built that to a fairly large company in the Charlotte area. I have a partner with that as well, and he basically runs that side of the business, which is awesome. And that's given me time to get into other things like Greystone. So did that little small trash can pad, and then I came back to Charlotte, and that's kind of when I was like, hey, I can really do this thing myself. So started pushing hard. And a little backstory also is my parents' house, our next door neighbors, unfortunately, their house exploded from gas. I know we talked about that very briefly, Alex, but it's a really blessing in disguise because our house was also damaged, but we were able to, our house got torn down and we ended up selling a lot and stuff, but the pool in the backyard with the pavers around was basically just going to get trashed. So I asked my dad, I was like, hey, what are they doing with these? He's like, they're getting trashed. I was like, well, no way. That's a couple bucks back there, right? And this is after I'd done the trash can pad, seeing what I thought was a lot of money in construction. So I picked up these pavers.
Good.
And I had some fraternity brothers that were living in the area that obviously weren't working because it was right at the beginning of COVID. And I was picking them up for $1 a piece, or I was picking them up and I was selling them for $1 a piece on Facebook Marketplace. I think I picked up 3,000 of them and I sold them all. And people, I think 4 or 5 people bought them to all. Because it was maybe every bit of like 1,200 square feet, like Belgard, whatever that 3-piece or 2-piece dimensional style. So it's not Tegra Block, obviously. I didn't know what Tegra Block was back then, but sold them. Was telling people that I installed them, or asking if they needed someone to install them, telling them that I could install them, and that was it. So my first clients were Tammy and Terry Peoples, and that was in 2020. That was actually in November because I was still in college.
Yeah.
So I was kind of doing like landscaping type of stuff. Actually, Easter. That's right, because I was on the way to Virginia. I go there twice a year. So I was in the car. It was like $2,000. They called me. They're like, hey, we really want to do this. And I'm a very faith-driven guy. The company's based a lot about, God and religion and stuff like that. And I was really big. They were like, hey, we feel like God's telling us, we need to use you on this job. This is an opportunity for you. So I'll never forget sitting in the car and them telling me that. And I was like, holy smokes, $2,000, right? But I know the job cost me like $2,000. I made absolutely nothing. But hey, it helped me out. Got to where, I wouldn't be here without them, and still keep in contact with them. So I'd love to go back. I told them before, go back and redo that patio because it definitely wasn't the best. But, I did what I could back then. So
you did that and you're like, you know what? I can make a business out of this.
Pretty much. Yeah. So I had, like I said, I was in the business industry, or I was in business. I knew a lot about business, running businesses. And that's why I always say I'm a white collar boy in a blue collar industry, because I was like, all right, what's the quickest way to not necessarily grow this thing, but quickest way to run it efficiently? And that was me not being in the field whatsoever. So I started hiring a couple people, great guys, knew about the jobs, but I was still having to be there, manage, have a lot of interaction with the clients and stuff like that. And it was taking time away from selling. I mean, my girlfriend at the time, fiance now, she was still in college as well, up in Boone, North Carolina. So I was 2 hours away. We were long distance, which actually worked out really well. She was able to focus on school and I was able to work, 5 a.m. to 10 p.m., 11 p.m. every single day. And I wasn't bothered by anyone, right? It was just me and work, really. And that was really like awesome. And she was super supportive of that. And that's kind of when I pushed. I was like, all right, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to like do it right, because I'm not one to half-ass anything. So can we cuss on here?
Yeah,
not
you're
really.
fine.
Sorry.
That's fine. I've said worse.
So we, started to push down that road, and that's kind of, just jumped into it head first, and one job after another, basically off of Facebook. And my mom knows a lot of people. I always tell her she has a big network in Charlotte, because she makes one Facebook post, selling something, and someone's bound to buy it. So that was super fortunate. I never had any financial help from my parents that I physically kept their money. There were definitely times where, and we'll get into this later, but times where I had to borrow money, but I always paid them back, because I'm never one to take any money and not give it back, because that's not how I roll, and treat people like you want to be treated. So
cool.
That
Well, that's a good start. Did you have, I'm sure you did, but did you have particular challenges hiring people because you didn't really know the construction side of it outside of watching YouTube videos, which it's a good strategy, but it's a little tough when you start arguing with your foreman and you got to pull something up on your phone to double check what he's saying.
Yeah. No, I mean, I have a lot of trust in people. I'm a big delegator, in good and bad. It's good and bad.
Pros and cons,
my biggest thing with making connections at these stone yards, I think that's what really drove me to where I am today as well. All of our suppliers I have great relationships with, as well as you guys at Tech Block, right? So Carolina Brick was the first supplier I was buying from at the time. And Ezekiel, still keep in contact with him today. That was, like I said, 3-4 years ago. And he knew I was new. I remember showing up to the stone yard in my blue 4Runner with pulling like a 16-foot single axle trailer, and I would like load up one pallet at a time. Literally, I know delivering stuff was like way easier, but he would, I'd always tell him, hey, I need to help on the weekends. I trusted him a lot. He knew what he was doing somewhat. He knew more about the specs side of things because he was working on the supplier than he did for the physical installation. But because he was working there, 50 hours a week, he knew a ton of installers. So he would say, hey, I'll grab, 4 or 5 guys will come over on a Saturday. We'll knock this out for you. Slowly, I would start asking those guys, kind of planting seeds. Hey, would you be interested in working for me? And it was really hard for them to trust me because I was so young and I didn't know a lot of things, like you're saying, Alex. So I really put a lot of trust in them, letting them know that I trust them and I want them to trust me just as much. I hired first guy, Pinto and Louie. They're amazing. And that was almost a year later after I first did, my small trash can pad. So that was in 2020. And that's what kind of drove it. I allowed them to. And then my cousin Bryce, who I named foreman, who really didn't know much, but he was great at interacting with clients and quickly learned, obviously, from the other guys how to run the crew and what was efficient and what was not efficient and what was the right way and wrong way to do it. But there's so many resources out there online with YouTube and forums and Facebook pages and this and that, and talking to people at the suppliers and there's landscape yards and stone yards and all that stuff to really do it right. There's really no excuse to do it wrong nowadays just because there's so much information out there. But there are a lot of ways to go about how to do it right. And that was what I struggled with the most because it might look wrong mid-project. And then I quickly realized, okay, these guys are doing it a different way to get to the same step. It works.
I think that's there's a couple of things that you did maybe intuitively or intentionally. I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but making those networks and making those connections happen is what made it easier for you because you didn't need to know how to do everything. You just needed to know how to find someone who knew how to do it and make sure to charge accordingly so that you can accommodate that expert or semi-expert or whatever, this person who's better at the thing than you, bring them into the fold and get them in, either as an employee or as a sub. I think that's very wise and being comfortable delegating when it's your name that's making the deals, it's your reputation that's another that's another one of those hurdles that sometimes takes people a long time to learn how to overcome. But that's something that you were comfortable with doing right out the gate, which I think gives you a bit of an edge early on.
Mm-hmm. It was definitely a good thing and a bad thing delegating, right? It can it has screwed me multiple times, but it has also given me the opportunity to learn. I never ever failed before. I've just learned more and more and more, and I'm super optimistic, and which is why I think me having trust in a lot of people is there. And then delegating, obviously, out of those factors, like I tell people, I'm going to trust you until you prove me that I can't trust you anymore. So same thing with delegation. I'm going to delegate this out until, proving that you can't do it. So I'll never forget in college, I ended up dropping out after my junior year, which was in 2021 dropped out of college. And it's mainly because of accounting, which is so funny because I'm so in the know of my numbers now. Back then, I was like, whatever, let's rock. I was all about cash flow. And literally, I know, if I had a halt at the jobs, I'll never forget the mentor. He's like, show my bank account. He's like, oh, wow. He's like, you're crushing it. I was like, yeah. He's like, well, what if all your jobs stopped right now and you had no more jobs coming in? I was like, I would be screwed, right? And that was really big. I took a step back. But at the time in college, this whole accounting thing, I didn't care. I had a huge discussion with my professor because I wasn't getting the balance sheet and I wasn't getting this and that. And he was trying to tell me stuff was a, liability, when I was like, this is really like an asset, because, it's making me money, but it's, going down depreciation. Anyways, I was like, I don't need this class. I was like, I have a CPA, I have an accountant. They do all this stuff for me. Why do I need to know this stuff? Now it is actually beneficial to know. I've learned it from my accountants and my mentors is, there are accountants and CPAs and CFOs and those numbers guys out there that know stuff, but with you knowing the information as well and having those knowledgeable conversations with them is so much more key. So the delegation is great, but if you are delegating, you have no clue, the person could also be completely screwing you.
Yeah. Knowingly or unknowingly. That, like, I think that's another key point, right? Like you're highlighting the importance of financial literacy, regardless of whether or not you're running the books yourself or not. You still need to understand the books, because you want to hire a quality CPA or accountant or bookkeeper or all of the above. You can't do that without knowing a little bit about it. And I think we were just talking with Mark from LMN a couple recordings ago, and he was saying the same thing. Like, probably the biggest gap that's preventing most businesses from taking a true step forward is a gap in financial literacy, because they don't know what they don't know. And when you don't know what you don't know, well, then there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, without a doubt. And that's where numbers are so key. I've switched softwares. Like, I think I'm on my 5th software and now going to my 6th.
Really?
I've been in business for 4 years. People joke around that, we were up at Equipment Expo at Antonio Zeppa's event, and we had Weston was synced up, and all those, there were probably 60 of us there, and we all use different softwares. They're all joking around about to me that I'm a software whore because I've switched. But it's mainly because I haven't ever taken the time to fully understand the software. Right? There's what you put in is what you get out.
Hey, Hardscape pros, get ready to turn adversity into opportunity in 2024 with the Hardscaper Showcase events. Discover cutting-edge tools, new construction techniques, and must-have products that will set you apart from the competition. This year, we're diving deep into pool projects, unlocking secrets to flawless coping installations, addressing drainage challenges, and maximizing value for your clients. You'll also learn how to elevate your outdoor kitchen game. We're talking about streamlining builds, creating multifunctional spaces, and impressing clients with innovative concepts. Finally, we'll show you how to stay ahead of the curve with the latest design trends. Explore new color combos, patterns, and layout strategies that will leave your clients speechless. Don't miss out on the Hardscaper Showcase events, empowering hardscape professionals to thrive in 2024. Visit events.hardscaper.com and sign up today.
I've switched, like I said, 6 times. So software whore, and I've now realized how important it is to know those numbers, and also the implementation is so key in these softwares, right? Element, Synced Up, Aspire, Jobber, whatever you're using, the implementation is the biggest thing, right? Not just putting in the right numbers, but knowing how to use the software. What you put in is what you get out. And that was the biggest issue, is why I've switched so much, is because I have my office manager who I delegate a ton of tasks to, from, signing documents, sending out invoices, simple client communication, as well as implementing softwares, which he's amazing at, right? And he's a software geek, but that doesn't make me a software geek. So when I hop in a software and I'm trying to look at something, he knows all of our numbers. I'm very open about that in the company, and he gets it, but there's only so much he can explain to me without me having to know it myself. So now we've switched. We're on our, like I said, I think our 6th software. We started with just a simple, invoice thing, CRM thing. Then we went to Builder Trend, which was way too big for our britches. We were doing like $500,000 a year, and Builder Trend, is theoretically built for these massive companies. And then we switched to, and we had no implementation. They just signed us up and get to
Off you go. Good luck.
Yeah. So that was crazy for us. And then we switched to a software called 1%, which I'm sure you guys have heard of. It's gone downhill and yada, yada. And then we went to Synced Up. And then now we're at LMN, and we're switching to Aspire currently. And Aspire, I'm really heavily invested in. We have, obviously, if you've never heard of Aspire, it's used by some of the top landscape companies in the country, in the world, really. And we're a smaller company now. We're a smaller fish in the pond, but we're really looking to grow in that company. And I'm looking to be invested in this company until Greystone goes bye-bye, right? Which is hopefully never, as I'm looking to build a legacy. But the numbers and the data that some of these softwares can pull, like LMN, Synced Up, Aspire, is so key. But if you don't know the numbers, you're kind of just doing yourself a disservice. Mm-hmm. And that's what I didn't know. And that's what took me in a hole at the end of last year. Yeah.
So it's not necessarily that one is light years ahead of another. It's, and I get this because like I've lived it too, even with our own business here, where we will get on board with something, you'll get a tool, but the tool doesn't do the work for you. The tool just makes the work easier. Yeah. So if you don't know how to use the tool, or you don't set up the tool properly, you don't train enough people on the tool isn't worth anything. And then you're like, well, this tool, your time goes by, and then you're looking at your monthly bill or your annual payments for a tool, and you're like, this tool isn't worth it. Yeah. So you start looking at a different tool, and then you make the same mistake again. And then basically by the third or fourth time, you're like, oh, it's not the tools the problem. I'm the problem.
Yeah.
I need to start actually using the tool the way it's designed to be used, and set it up and get more people to use it the way I want them to use it. Then we'll get what we want out of it. And that's the stage that you're at. But you got to be careful with that too, because that becomes expensive, because you're repeating the same amount of work and effort, and it's producing no benefit for you, right? Like that admin who's building up and setting up a software and implementing 6 times in 4 years, that's a lot of dead money if you don't pay attention to that.
It's been extremely frustrating, and no fault but myself, right? And it's like committing to the software is something, and then the grass is always going to be greener on the other side.
That's it.
Right? It's like people tell me, we do a lot of custom work and we're looking at going some other directions. I'm not getting the pools. I've said it over and over and over again. I've had clients ask us to do pools. They're like, Lawson, we want you to do pools. I'm like, I'm not doing your pool. Call this guy. Because the grass is always greener. Right? I've seen so many people get into pools and go completely south. And I've also seen people get into lawn care and go south. I was almost one of them. And then, there's all sorts of different routes. It's like the grass is always greener, which comes back to also the software. It's like they all do what you need them to do if you're heavily invested into them. And I fully believe that with the right people and the right implementation and the right knowledge, that you can go into these softwares and build a multi-million-dollar business and really increase your net. Because I don't care if you're doing 5 million, 10 million, 100 million. If you're not bringing home money at the end of the day, why are you in business?
Right.
Because, so having the right software is so key, and all softwares are good for different things. But I think there are some that are better. But it's definitely a key thing, is knowing your numbers within those softwares.
So if we talk about the numbers quickly, I'm not asking you to open up your books to the world here, but
can you share a QuickBooks screen real quick?
Yeah, but you started the business almost 4 years ago. Where are you at today in terms of revenues and in terms of crews? Maybe just a couple stats here.
So we started, like I said, 2020. I think the first year, I remember meeting with my accountant, and I was like, hey, do I need he does he's my old accountant, but still good friends with him, one of my mentors. And I was like, hey, do I need to set up an LLC and stuff? He's like, no, you're good. You're still in college. You're doing this part-time on the weekends. Because we still had online classes, so I'd come back and forth. And I think I did like 80,000 my first year. And he's like, oh, shit. Yeah. He's like, I thought you were going to do maybe 20,000. He's like, maybe we should have made an LLC, but too late now, right? to take some of the liability off myself.
But that's why it's important to share goals too, right?
Yeah. And I told him, and he knows I'm a hustler, and he knows I get after it. And it's funny because I didn't think I was going to do it either, but so many opportunities just came about. And fortunately, unfortunately, there was a lot of liability I had because I didn't have an LC set up or anything. But fortunately, we were very lucky that nothing happened and we got through that year smoothly. The following year, I believe that was 2021. I think we did about 500,000 to 600,000. And that was one of the years where I brought home the most amount of money physically, I think, just because I was still small. I was in the field here and there. It was like me and two other guys.
Yeah, maybe like no overhead, so everything just coming straight in.
I was living at my parents' house. Like it was basically I had no cost. And I felt like I was living like a king. I was like 21 years old and I was like buying stupid stuff, right?
Those were the days.
Those were the days. And I was still in college too then a little bit. So I was snowboarding a lot and messing around and hanging out with my fraternity and all this stuff. So that was 2021. 2022 we did 1.4-ish million.
Wow.
And we had at peak capacity, I had 9 guys in the field with 2 crews, which was a terrible decision. And I had a project manager, an office manager, and a guy doing my content. And it was the most unfulfilling year that I've had in business. And that's not to say like I didn't enjoy it. Obviously, we did some last year. Well, yeah, right. Last year, yeah.
Yep,
last year. That was like the year that I did like some of the most badass projects, but I lost our ass. Or the team lost money, all of us. It was like,
you weren't charging enough. You were too top heavy.
Didn't know my numbers. Didn't know my numbers. Like I said, softwares. You
were somewhere between software 3 and 4.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like I was trying to get estimates out because it was, everyone knows COVID spiked the industry a lot, and I was trying to get estimates.
You're trying to ride the wave.
Fast.
Yeah.
I was like $35 a square foot, $30 a square foot, 25, whatever, 40, whatever it was, right? I'm like, holy smokes, I got cooked. And it wasn't that really destroyed me, but it was the time that it took on job sites, right? The difference between having 3 guys on a job site versus 4 guys on a job site is massive, unless the job is massive. And having 4 guys on a job site compared to 5 guys on a job site is wildly different as well. So that was my biggest thing. I was thinking more guys, 2 crews. This would run so smooth. And the quality was there. The work was there, but stuff was taking either too long or it was, we were bouncing job site to job site. And it wasn't bouncing because I needed more money, but it was bouncing because I was waiting on materials to come in or I wasn't planning ahead. And that was the biggest thing. So
the work was either taking longer than you anticipated for the crew, or external factors like product delays would cause delays to occur on your crew. So then you got to move a crew to another site, and now you have a bunch of open sites on top of it. So you have a bunch of cash out, nothing coming in.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing. And last year we lost $80,000. Okay. And my team knows that. Obviously, I've never come out with that publicly, but here we are, right? And I'm not scared to open up about that stuff.
That's okay. It's important to know,
exactly.
And you're adjusting and you're making corrections within your business for it. So it's fine.
So many people look at that gross number. They're like, oh, my business does $1 million. I don't care. Did you bring home any money, right? Yeah. And because that's where it comes back to the white collar boy in a blue collar industries, because I'm so focused on my bottom line while growing, as well as not so much an exit, but what is the value of the business? And if you have no cash at the end of the day, there's no value, especially in construction, because construction is very contract based. It's not, or it's job by job. It's not a year-long contract, 5-year contract. Mm-hmm. And this year I really scaled back. I let go last year of 5 guys, sold a truck, sold a machine. I had moved to a new shop, So that created a little bit more overhead, but I got rid of, half of my debt because I had 2 trucks and 2 machines. So I got rid of some debt, put some cash in our pocket, and I kind of reset. I also let go of my project manager. So I really let go of 6 guys from Thanksgiving last year up until I think like right before Christmas ish. So it was rough. It was really, really tough. I remember my project manager, Trevor, amazing guy, still a great friend of mine. He moved from Tennessee to come work for me. He shut down his business. He's like, hey, I'm moving down. I was like, oh, let's do this thing. Let's boogie. And that was the hardest thing. I was sitting in my bed at like 8 a.m. It was rough. I was not wanting to get out of bed.
Mm-hmm. You're
not
dreading
from like a depressed standpoint, but I was like, oh, just gotta deal with this like again, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sitting out in my bed, like kneeling down, like just praying to God. I'm like, Lord, just like I cannot fire Trevor. Like this guy literally moved here, signed a 1-year lease at his apartment. I told him I'd give him a year. We'll figure it out, and let's try this out. And he had brought down 2 of his pieces of equipment that we had to use here and there, and he was also renting it. So he had some other cash. So I wasn't super worried, but I care way too much about people more than I do about money. And I'd rather lose money and pay someone and treat them well than try to make all the money myself. And I just remember praying, Lord, just like, I cannot fire Trevor. There's no way. And I get a text from Trevor literally 10 minutes later. I'm getting chills talking about this. 10 minutes later, Trevor says, hey, man, we need to talk. I really love you so much, man. And I love this business, but I don't think I can do this anymore. And that was the biggest like pivot point in the business. I was like, all right, like first, like I said earlier, like, we're really faith-driven business. That's the first thing. It was so cool to just see his fruit in the company, as well as, okay, my team is a lot more bigger than I think they are, right? With their own decisions and stuff. So let go of Trevor mutually, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
He ended up doing his equipment rental. He's doing great. He's moved back to Tennessee, live closer to his family and stuff. And he's got like 6 or 7 machines. So that's really awesome for him. But that was the biggest thing. And then, looking at my numbers again, I'm like, all right, where can I make more plays? So I just sold, like I said, a truck machine, got rid of 6 guys. And now I'm entering into 2023. I'm like, all right, same goal, 1.5 million again. And let's do it with half the guys. Because I know it's 100% positive for a fact that if I run efficiently enough and I charge accordingly, a crew can do 1.5 million. So I had 4 guys, just me, my office manager, and a guy still doing our content because our Instagram's pretty big and we were pushing YouTube and stuff. And that was it. We started cruising this year. The biggest thing I was focused on was man hours, hitting them. And that's when I started to get into new software, which was LMN. And we started, diving a little bit deeper into like actually tracking how long stuff was taking. We weren't tracking within LMN, which is kind of a downside, but we were tracking on a spreadsheet, which is better than nothing. And
why
weren't we using LMN?
Why were you tracking like outside of everything in a spreadsheet? Was it just it's tough to get the guys to clock in out and you were doing it yourself?
Yeah, they had a time tracker card thing.
Like a punch card.
Yeah, punch card. Yeah, they would do it, and then I would just write it down at the end of the week. I'd write down, this is where we're at. It was just easier, more efficient for me from like a quick see it at glance type thing. Because I didn't want to dive in and learn the LMN side of time tracking.
Yeah, because now you don't know per job function on the site, right? Like how long did it take us to put that base in? How long did it take us to lay the pavers? How long did the wall take? You only know how long a day is, and you already know how long a day is.
Exactly. And I was pricing things by the day, kind of like I know, 500 square feet with 3 guys. I know we were able to lay in like 3 days, like from start to excavation, showing up on site to polysand, grade and get out of there. And so what I was doing was, okay, I got, like I said, I started with 4 guys, ended up with 3, which I'll tell how that happened in a second. But that was where I really wanted to get to, is 3 guys on a crew. and I knew they were working 11 hours a day, 36 man hours, 3 days. Okay, you got whatever, 36, 72, whatever that is, 90, 100 and something. I don't know. I'm not good at math.
What do you say?
Graduate college. 36 times 3.
36 times 3 is 108.
Okay, yeah. So 108 man hours for a 500 square feet patio. I knew that for a fact.
Okay.
I also had my overhead figured out. Like, that was all dialed in a separate spreadsheet that Ian McCarthy with Blue Call built out. He has an accounting background.
Mm-hmm.
That was really beneficial. So did that. And that's when I started to realize, okay, these numbers are so key. I was tired of losing money. But then my overhead was still really large because I was in a position of, I've got 4 guys. I've got an office or shop space that's, rents $2,000 plus a month. I've got an office manager, which I need, but for how small I am, it's not necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got a content guy. It's like, I'm not making any money off my Instagram. I'm bringing jobs in, but I'm not like making money physically.
Right.
It's hard to figure out that breakdown. And
it's a marketing expense. You have an admin expense, you have a marketing expense, and it's because you don't want to do those things yourself.
Exactly.
Because you want to focus on selling the jobs. Yeah. But that's where your prices need to reflect that.
Exactly. So that's what I, figured out that stuff. And then, like I said, I let go of the 4th guy. It was, I had a crew. It was a lead. It was his brother, his dad, and their best friend. And I basically, I pulled my lead aside and I was like, hey, I got to let go of one of the guys. Who do you think is the weakest link?
Mm-hmm.
Not from a disrespect thing, because I didn't really want to disrespect any of his friends, but I was like, this is what it is. I'm going to pay you a little bit more because I can pay $1, $2 more if we can take away, a $20 an hour person. So he was like, hey, listen, I love my dad, but I know that my brother and my best friend are way more efficient in this space and they're more knowledgeable. I was like, all right, sounds good. So I told his dad, I was like, listen, I'm going to give you 1 more week. He ended up getting another job, still doing great and stuff. But that was one of the hardest things also, was getting rid of that, so getting rid of him. So long story short, we started to figure out our numbers, but our overhead was so high for just a 3-man crew, and we were pricing ourselves out of jobs. So I started to kind of dial back what we were making per hour, but started to get those man hours right. And I brought on a project manager, and that's kind of when we started to push heavier and started to remove myself. Well, I was already out of the field, but now this time I'm not even going to job sites. And I was strictly just selling. And this year at end of 2023, we did 1.48, I think is what we'll finish at. And we actually made money this year, which is awesome. So I knew it was possible with 3 guys. It was just getting to that point. So that was kind of it. And then now we've taken a shift in a whole direction. So,
yeah. But I mean, if you look at super high level, you went from 1.4 with 9 guys, 2 crews, a project manager, an office manager, a content person, and yourself. And now you're doing 1.48 1 year later with 6 fewer people.
Yeah.
That makes sense? Yeah. With 6 fewer people, you still manage to delegate the things like content creation, office management, and running the crews. Those 3 core activities are delegated. So you're still able to focus on the areas that you're strongest at. And you did that because you took a good hard look in the mirror, and then you started looking at the numbers and you started really crunching them yourself to better understand what's going on, instead of just relying on everyone telling you what's going on. Like, you're looking and you're getting your teeth into it to figure out, okay, I need to do this, I need to do that. And then you had a bunch of very tough decisions to make, and they're never fun when you have to do that stuff. I've had to do that stuff too in my career, and it never, ever, ever, ever gets easier. Whether it's the first time or the 20th time, it doesn't matter.
No.
But you involved your team in those discussions, in those decisions, and you were very transparent. So people understand that as the leader of the company, you're doing the best that you can to lead the company in the right direction, to protect their interests. but sometimes that means making some tough calls, and sometimes that means parting ways with some people, parting ways with some equipment, parting ways with some ways of doing things. So I think there's still a lot of good stuff there, and there's a lot of mature decisions and very objective decisions. You're trying to remove the emotional part from it, which is tough at any age with any experience. But I think it's still impressive that in this short time frame, you've been able to build a business to this level, and you've already had some pretty good ups and some pretty shitty downs, and you're able to adjust and rebound quickly. This episode is brought to you by hardscaper.com. The Hardscaper mission is to empower industry professionals with the skills, inspiration, and confidence they need to take their businesses to new heights. Struggling with training programs for your team? Looking for helpful tips to build a better company? Subscribe today to gain access to hours of interactive on-demand hardscape construction and business courses for free. Check out hardscaper.com. I just want to ask, in terms of, because you mentioned mentors with an S, we don't need to necessarily get into names, but how many mentors and are they all similar, or do you have like different mentors for different skill sets?
Yeah. So, I think it's interesting. I use the word mentor. I don't know if mentor or advisor is the right word. Like I mentioned, my dad is a business coach. He's my father, obviously, my dad. And my dad knows value of time, obviously. So, I get his time for free, but I do pay one of his coaches to coach our team on the business side of things, knowing, our data more, our lag lead lifts more than it is, and our KPIs more than business advice, more or less. And that's more of a team thing for me. Really important to get on a call weekly with him. And then I've got a mentor that I've met when I was detailing cars. I ended up detailing one of his trucks, and then just building a great relationship with him. And he's a great guy. His name is DJ, down in he's in Rock Hill, so he's about 45 minutes from me. But we talk on the phone weekly, and he runs a massive construction company with his father. They do mostly land clearing and grading and walls and stuff. But their average job is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 million. So being, talking to him on that side of things. And then I've got an advisor mentor, Paul, who's just super dialed in as far as systems go and business knowledge goes. And he runs a magnitude of businesses, but just getting breakfast with him and, having his, text message, back and forth, whatever, asking him questions as far as what would he recommend in certain situations, or setting up, legal side of things, if, looking to scale different directions, because protecting yourself is obviously super key. And having someone with that type of knowledge is really important as well. So I'd say I have 3 main people. I have multiple advisors and other people I talk to. Antonio Zeppa is one. Talk to him a lot. Really faith-driven guy as well, and have great conversations with him, as well as other people my age. But I think those are probably the 3 biggest players that have helped me get to where I am, answering questions and stuff. So
it's the same as the beginning, though. All the help and all the people you're able to get is because you connect and you share and you ask questions and you exchange with people. You got someone for your system. Yeah, I mean, we hear it all the time, and it sounds like one of those bullshit things that all these so-called influencers use all the time, but it's true. The more good people you surround yourself with, the easier it is to get things done, because someone knows someone who can get that thing done. If you got a guy for everything, you're in a great spot. You got Paul, who's your systems and business knowledge guy. You got your dad, who's reinforcing the value of time for you. You have someone who's on your dad's team, who's the business coach for your team. You have that business owner who you met through the car detailing.
Yeah, DJ.
And then you got Zeppas, and you got Piers, and you got all these other guys. So you got a bunch of people. you got a bunch of people that you can lean on and you can ask questions. So even when it's hard and you have tough decisions to make, you can bounce it off a few people and get some feedback.
Yeah,
so I think that's really smart.
Super important.
That's that. And the more you grow the business, the more that becomes valuable, because the more situations you're going to get exposed to that you have not experienced before. But I'm sure in this group, someone has. And that can help give you the confidence you need to make the decisions that sometimes seem really hard or you have a doubt about. You know, if someone else has been down that path before, well, it's a lot easier to follow.
Yeah, it's like my dad uses this example a lot, right? It's, forget his name, but the first person to run the 4-minute mile for the Olympics. And let me look his name up real quick because that's important. Anyways, long story short, runs this 4-minute mile, and then next thing you know, everyone's running 4-minute miles, right? It's the first believer. My dad has a book actually called The First Believer, based upon that.
Roger Bannister.
That's his name, right?
Age 25, a 3:59.4.
And when was that?
1954.
Yeah. And no one had ever run a 4-minute mile before, ever, right? Now, to even qualify to the Olympics, the Olympic trials, you have to run under a 4-minute mile. It's like clockwork. But until someone was capable of doing it, didn't make sense. So me, right? People always ask, are you a leader or follower? I'm both, right? I'm a leader in some aspects of the business. I have to be, but I'm also a huge follower when it comes to stuff that I know is possible, but I don't know how to get there. Why would I waste 5 years, 10 years, whatever, even 10 minutes of research when I could call someone on the phone and get a quick answer or get some guidance over the next 3 months on how to get to X amount of points? It's really interesting. Like, I talk about scalability a lot in business and opportunity, and some people want to keep their business at X, and I want to take mine to A. Like, I'm going like all the way, or really Z, whatever direction you're going. I don't know, but
you went all the way around back to A.
Yeah, right. And it's like I'm trying to get into LinkedIn a little bit more. That's the one thing I struggle with, is like I don't walk the talk on that end, because I got connected with some pretty high players on there, and I just haven't reached out to them. But that's something that, just starting to plant seeds and post stuff and allow them to see it, and then start to kind of plug and play and and pick their brain a little bit, because there's people out there, no matter how much you want to do in revenue, there's people out there that are doing 10 times more than you. And it's not all about the money, but obviously we're in business to support ourselves and support our families. And if you want to get to a certain place, if you want to get to $1 million, like, call someone that's doing $5 million.
Yeah, because they got there. They got there, and they know what mistakes they made once they got there. So
yeah, and that's where it's so big. And people might laugh, but I'm taking the business to $100 million, and I don't know how I'm going to get there yet. I'm still working on that, or I'm just trying to get to the next 10. But having the players that can get me to that place, not only in the team physically on payroll and stuff, but also the players that are mentors, advisors, friends, and people that I'm just interacting with daily, that can push us to that certain goal and recommend stuff, because I know stuff, but I don't know a lot. There's people that know way more than me. Yeah. Why not utilize the resources?
Exactly. And setting the lofty and ambitious goals, there's nothing wrong with that. I remember one of the key conversations I had with Charlie, the president of Techo Block. He told me one of the numbers that he had in his head. This is a long time ago, but he's like, there's this number, and he shared it with me. And that was like, that's all I needed. Like, I'm just an employee, but like that was all I needed. Like, all right, we have a target, like we have a mission, we're going to figure out how to get there. So like, I am thinking all the time, how can I help get the company there? And I think if you can surround yourself with the right people and you can build the right team, and then you have that network of other people outside the business that are willing to support in the ways that they can through the specializations that they have, there's no reason why you can't achieve those goals. It's really just a matter of learning, applying, and time. That those are the three variables, and the rest should happen. You know,
that's so key. Like sharing with your team. That's why I'm so open about my numbers. Right. I'll tell you, if we're winning or losing, like I'll open to a certain extent. Obviously, I'm not breaking it down to the T of what we're spending money on, but I'm very transparent with the team. If they want to know our books, excuse me, I'll show them, right? Because I'm not hiding anything, and I want them to know that we're all playing the same game. We're all on the same team, and I'm going to open up the playbook for them and show them. I've very clearly laid out. I'm a very big performance over presence guy. So all of my employees and subcontractors and everyone within our organization are all playing the same game of, show up and do your work. You're going to get rewarded. Show up and don't do your work. You might as well stay home. Right. And the salaries are super low. Everyone can admit to that in our company, but the long-term play, not even the long-term play, but the driving of the ship on their behalf is so rewarding to where it's impossible not to make money if you're working. Right? Because there's so many companies and mainly bigger companies, but companies as a whole are just say, hey, here's your 100,000 salary. And, I'll see you next year for a 2% raise or whatever it is. I don't know. But for me, it's like, here's your 40,000 salary. I want to get you to 200,000. Bring in X amount of clients yourself, put out X amount of door hangers or signs, and, make sure we're on your job specifically that you're closing, 50% gross margins and whatever else, right? And make sure there's no client complaints. Here, bring in X amount of reviews. You're going to get rewarded X. I'm so big on that side of things because that's what's driving the ship. How can, my dad always says, how can you work on the business and not in the business, as well as there's a huge difference between an owner versus an entrepreneur versus a business owner, right? An employee, right? There's so many different categories of that thing. And like, I feel like you're truly not a business owner until you can go, what's that? Like passing the fishing test, right? Go fish for like a week straight and never get a phone call on the boat. Like, until you can go do that, like everyone is like an employee of their own company. And my team knows one of our visions is to remove myself from the company within the next 3 years. And that's by automating and making systems and stuff like that within the business to quote properly, do the job properly, design all that stuff. And they're all on board with it because they want to play their part and be rewarded for it. Because I'd rather pay our top producers in the company 10 times more than my salary to allow them to succeed and be rewarded for it than me take all the money and, be up their ass all day.
Yeah.
Because if they're in the day-to-day operations and I'm removed from it, they're doing something right and they're going to get rewarded for it, which comes from the performance thing. When I have to step in, that's when they lose money.
Well, makes sense. You're building a company, you're building a team, and you're giving them the vision and the guidance and the support systems so that they can drive the ship, so that you don't have to, because that's what your goal is. And that makes sense. If that's what your goal is, well, then you need to take the steps to reach that goal. So it's good. Okay, man. There's a lot of great stuff that we've covered here. And I know a lot of people who listen to the show like to reach out to the guests and pick their brain because they have similar situations that they're living. What's the best way for people to reach you? Is it through Instagram?
Yeah, you can reach out to my office man. No, I'm kidding. No.
Yeah.
You can
delegate that too.
You can call my assistant. My Instagram, Greystone Hardscapes or Lawson Campy.
Okay.
Both great ways to get a hold of me. I do have, like I mentioned, a content manager checks that stuff and notifies me as needed on that stuff. More than happy to answer questions. I've gotten phone calls with multiple people. And it's also, I have some people that, I talk to weekly that, have great relationships with that I've met on Instagram. So that's a great way to reach out. I know you and I talk on there and stuff. So
yeah, exactly.
Great. And then if I like you enough, I'll give you my phone number.
Sounds good. Okay, man. Well, thank you very much for joining us on the show. I think there's a lot of great stuff here. There's some good lessons that anybody can internalize and use within their own business. And really appreciate you taking the time here to join us on the Hardscape Growth Show. Until next time, everybody, work hard, pave harder, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Hardscape Growth, a podcast for hungry professionals who want to grow their businesses and level up. Each episode is all about taking the next step in running your business, so make sure you never miss a show by subscribing on your favorite podcast player. And if you're finding this information to be useful, help others in your position discover us by giving us a star rating and leaving a comment. We'll see you next week.